Hi, I'm Kevin Rutherford. Welcome to RG's Talent Tips. Today I'm going to show you an overview on how to create an integrated HR and business strategy. So let's dive right in. Every year, a large majority of businesses conduct an annual strategic planning process. And while many considerations go into creating a business strategy, most are built based on what we call the competitive context. And quite frankly, most companies do a great job. However, the one thing we often see missing is that leaders fail to recognize the impact of organizational resources and capabilities, better known as people. The effect they have on strategy development and execution is critical. Few departments have a better landscape view of the entire organization than human resources. And for integrated business planning to be truly effective, a whole of organization plan is required to achieve a business's overarching goal. And to do this, it should include HR. Unfortunately, HR, for any number of reasons, is often left out of the conversation. As a result, they wind up being the recipient of strategy and not a contributor to strategy. And today, I want to change all that and show you how HR can help shape business strategy and bring it to life. I'll discuss the business strategy components first, and then layer in the HR pieces to ensure that your strategic plan has the highest probability of success. And to keep it simple, I'm going to draw it on the blackboard. So we start by first examining 4 key areas before we actually get into doing strategic planning. And those 4 key areas are, number 1, we want to look at the organization's mission. And when we say mission is essentially, why does the organization exist? Why are we in business? The second key thing that we look at is what we call vision. And vision simply is the look at where are we today versus where do we want to be in the future. That helps us decide where does that journey going to take us to get to where we want to go. The third piece then is what we call values. And values is really a look at what are the behaviors, the actions, and the ways that we want people to act from where we are today to where we want to be. Along that journey, what is it we want them to do? And then lastly, we look at what we call the biz model. And the biz model is our business model is essentially how the company makes money. Because in order for us to be able to plan the future, we need to know those 4 things. Why do we exist? Where are we today versus where do we want to be? How do we want people to act and behave along the journey? And then lastly, how do we make money? Once we have all those things, then we can begin to analyze what we call our current state. Where are we today? So here's where we are today, and the way we typically do that is we use a couple of strategic planning, what I call exercises. And those exercises start with what we call an environmental scan. And that environmental scan is generally done qualitatively and quantitatively. Qualitatively, we're going to ask our business partners, our customers, our vendors for their opinions. How are we doing? What's working? What's not? All of those things kind of contribute to this. Plus, we will ask the accounting and or our risk development department to do something what we call a PEST or a PESTLE analysis. And that simply stands for political, economic, social, technological, environmental, and legislative. Once we have that overview on what's going on in the marketplace, we can then really quickly create what we call the SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis says, here's where we're strong, here's where we're weak, here's where we have opportunities, and here's where we have threats. This kind of shapes the foundation for guiding us for when we want to figure out where we want to go. Because if this is the future, we need to figure out the fastest way to get from point A to point B, and that SWOT analysis helps us do the overview. So once we're in here, we begin to create, and the organization will do what we typically call scenario planning. And that scenario planning simply says, what kind of actions can we take to get from point A to point B and guide ourselves along that way. Over here, we then look at what we call our long-term objectives. And these long-term objectives typically are created in a balanced way. Often people use the balanced scorecard. So we're going to look at what are our financial results that we're looking for, what are our customer results, what are our operational results, and then what are the people results. Taking all of this and spreading it across that time frame. Now again, organizations today typically only do about a 3-year time frame. It used to be 5 years, 10 years, but for our purposes today, we're going to use 3 years. And in creating that 3 years, we're looking to say, what are those competitive strategies going to be, if-then analysis, and then we're going to create a set of strategies based on year 1, year 2, and year 3. Now I very quickly have a good sense of what's going on in the organization and what do we need to do to be successful. Next thing I'm going to do then is to take these objectives and these plans that we have and create a series of cascading objectives that we will then bring down into the organization further so that we know where we're going and how people can actually operate. Typically what we're doing here is we're cascading these objectives down from over here. And then lastly, we want to focus on what we call execution. And execution simply is, what are the things that we need to get done, and do we have a set of plans in place to make that happen? Generally, we do that on a quarterly basis, so we look at Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, and we finalize what those specific actions are, and we usually look at that based on our KPIs or OKRs. And KPIs simply stand for Key Performance Indicators, and OKRs are Objectives and Key Results. That's how we're going to measure and see how well we're doing throughout the organization. Okay, now that we've looked at the business side, let's change over and quickly look at the people side. So if I'm going to look at our people side here, I'm going to change colors for us. One of the first things that we can do and how we can contribute to strategy is in the environmental scan. So while the business has done a PESTLE analysis, what we want to do on our end is we want to do what's called a supply and demand analysis. We're going to do workforce planning. We're going to create it in there and say, what is the talent that we need versus the talent that we have? What is the available talent that's in the marketplaces in which we serve? And what are the macro forces that are impacting talent? Now I can very quickly have my own environmental scan and create over here what we call a people SWOT. So not only do we have a business SWOT, we now have a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats landscape based on our people, given where we are today and where we're going in the future. So then the next thing that I want to do as part of this, when I'm doing the scenario planning and the business is doing this, now I want to look at what we call workforce implications. And that just simply means for every decision that the business makes about, hey, we could go this way, we could go global, or we could go domestic, or we could do any other kinds of number of strategic directions, what we want to know is, do we have a workforce that's capable of being there? So when we do this, we're looking at what I call the 8 C's. And the 8 C's focus on specific things that say, this is a risk to the business in each of these scenarios. So the first thing that we want to look at in those C's is culture. Is the culture that we have today the culture that we're going to need in the future? The second C is capacity. Does my team have the current capacity, meaning the time and the resources to be able to do what it is we want to do going forward in the future? The third key thing that we're going to look at is capability. Do we have enough people with the right skills to be able to do it? Then we're going to look at connection. Is the organization designed in a way to make work more efficient to deliver on that future? Then we're also going to look at the fifth C. The fifth C is cost, which is how much is it actually going to cost? Is it less money? Is it more money? Is it going to take more money to get where we want to go? Then we want to look at compliance issues. Is this new direction? Is this strategy? Is this shift? Is it going to be impacted by compliance issues? Then we also look at collaboration. Does that mean that we're going to have a lot more collaboration? Maybe we're going to be working virtually versus on site. All of those things really help determine it. And then lastly is continuity. As we do this analysis, is the business going to remain? Are we going to downsize this business and upsize another? Are we going to totally eliminate one? Are we going to expand everything? All of those 8 C's, those workforce implications, have a tremendous bearing on whether or not the organization is able to create a strategy that they can actually have an opportunity to win and deliver on. So again, where are we today? This is the current state. And B, where do we want to be in the future? This is the future state. All of these pieces combined together help us understand whether or not we can do that. And then when we're looking over here and we've got our long-term pieces, this then helps us create what we call our HR strategy. So just like the business has a 3-year strategy, we also have an HR strategy that we've built. And then we're going to break that down, like we said here earlier, and cascade it through the organization. Once we have these organizational objectives, we're going to break it down. Then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our own annual human capital plan. And this simply says, what are the actions that we need to take from a people perspective today, this year, in order to execute on these objectives over here. So we're going to look first at what we call enterprise-wide, what we call people philosophies and themes. Then the next thing that we're going to look at is our company-wide HR policies and procedures. Then we're going to roll these things down to individual priorities for people, and then give specifics to what we call talent action plans. Because once we know what it's going to take in order to make this happen here, we're going to have to create a set of talent action plans. These are specific actions that each individual needs to be able to execute in order for us to achieve these numbers, right? So this just kind of wraps up the idea of both sides here, and when we finish, let's summarize. So strategic HR is all about ensuring that we have a workforce capable of meeting or exceeding the strategic business objectives of the organization. And that's today as well as the future. And the only way that you can effectively do that is if you're playing a bigger role in integrating the HR strategy into the business strategy. So I strongly suggest today and encourage you to up your skills, get in the game, and change the narrative. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned something that you can apply right away. If you did and want more, please subscribe to our channel below and check out our website for even more content, handout, and free tools that will take you from where you are to where you want to be. Until next time.